Greetings to you, students. So today I want to teach you the basics on how to work on. Um, we have to consider what you call a linear graph. A linear graph. Then, after working on linear graph, then we have to consider the second graph, which is the quadratic graph. The quadratic graph. The quadratic graph. Then after quadratic graph, we have the last graph, which is cubic graph. Cubic graph. So today we want to work on these four basic graphs. So first of all, we have what we call a linear graph. A linear graph is just a straight line graph. So we want to apply this linear graph on both quadratic and cubic graphs. So let's first consider on how to work out on quadratic and cubic. So in order to work out on quadratic or cubic, first of all, you have to know some basics. You have to know some basics. You may be given, let's consider you may be given the graph of y is equals to 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. You may be given this graph, this one. Then, after given this graph, you may be given the table values. You may be given the table values. And remember, this table of values consists of x values, the x coordinates and the y coordinates to make it a point. So let's assume you are given -1 here, then 2 here, 5, 8, 6, 3, 4, 1. It's just a rough. It's just some rough coordinates. So you may be asked to find the value of a. You may be asked to find the value of a graphically. So in order to find the value of a, in order for you to find the value of a, then you have to substitute. Already you are given the value of x. The value of x is 5. Then you have to say when x is equal to 5, then find the value of y, which means a is the value of y. This is how to find the value of unknown in the table values. Right. Let's now move on to the second concept. And the second concept you have to know on linear graph. On linear graph, let's now consider what you call the linear graph. So on linear graph, you may be asked to draw the graph of the linear graph. Linear graph is something like y is equals to x plus 1. You may be asked to draw the graph of y is equals to x plus 1, but you know the Cartesian equation of the graph the Cartesian equation. This one, the Cartesian equation. 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, -2, -3. Then this one is -1, -2, -3, -4. Then this one is 1, 2, 3. Then for you to draw the graph of y is equals to x plus 1, then first of all you have to formulate the table values. Remember, you only need 2 points in order to draw the graph. You only need 2 points, which means the first point, and you know the point consists of 2 coordinates, x coordinate and y coordinate. So we have to let x is equals to 0 when x is equals to 0, which means when x is equals to 0, which means y is equals to 1. When x is equals to 1, which means y is equals to 2. So 0, 1 point, we have to note 0, 1 point, 0, 1 point, which means we have to put a star here. Then 1, 2 point, 1, 2 point, you have to put a star here, which means you have to use your ruler and make something like which cuts this point, something like using a straight line ruler. Then label the graph of y is equals to x plus 1. So this is how to draw the graph of the linear graph y is equals to x plus 1. Let's now move on some basics on quadratic graphs. let's consider some basics on quadratic graph. So on quadratic graph, let's consider a quadratic graph. Right. So on quadratic graph, what you have to know is the quadratic graph consists of two types of graphs. We have what you call the minimum graph and the maximum graph. The minimum graph, which means you may have something like this one, which is the maximum graph. Something like, this is y, this is x. This one is the maximum graph. Then you may be asked to draw the minimum graph. This one is minimum graph. This one is x and this one is y. So we may be asked to draw the graph like this one, the maximum graph and the minimum graph. Right. So from these two graphs, may be given a question. In form of a full exam question. Right. You may be asked to find the what you call the solutions. Exam sometimes call the solutions roots, or they sometimes ask you to solve the equation. Right. If the examiner asks you to solve the equation, to find the roots, or solve the equation, to find the roots, or to find the solution, right, what you have to do is, after drawing your graph, remember I said in order to draw your graph we have to use the table values. When x is -1, y is 2. When x is 5, y is 8. You already find the value of a using this one, substitution method, right? So for you to find the roots, you have to check the values of x where your graph casts the x-axis. So this is the way you can find your roots, your solutions, or you may use this graph to solve the equation graphically. So this is how to solve the equations, to find the roots, to find the solutions graphically. So sometimes also examiners may ask you to find the maximum or minimum point. Remember, point consists of two coordinates, the x coordinate and the y coordinate. As I said, the point consists of two coordinates and the y coordinate. So if the examiners asks you to find the maximum turning point, which means the maximum turning point is something here, which means you have to take the value of x here and the value of y to form a point. If they ask you to find the minimum turning point, which means the minimum turning point is somewhere here, which means you have to take the x coordinate and the y coordinate to form a point. And also they may ask you to find the maximum value of x or the maximum value of y. If they ask you to find the maximum value of x, which means you have to take the value of x. If they ask you to find the maximum value of y, which means you have to take the value of y. And sometimes they may ask you to find the minimum value of x and sometimes they may ask you to find the minimum value of y. Right. So for you to find those, just take the value of x. If they ask you to find the minimum value of y, x, and if the value of y, which means you take this one. In addition to that, some examiners also may ask you to find the equation of plane of symmetry. They may ask you to find the equation of plane of symmetry. Right. So for equation of plane of symmetry, like let's consider so this one is point maximum or minimum point. Then this one is equation of line of symmetry. Right. Equation of line of symmetry. Right. So for you to find the equation of line of symmetry, maybe the graph can be this cup up shaped, or this maybe U shaped, like this one. This one you can also call it a mountain shaped, this one, like this one. So they may ask you to find the line of symmetry, the equation of line of symmetry. Remember, in order to find the equation of line of symmetry, we have to add the x value and the x value. Like you have to say this x value, let's assume you are given -2, then you are given 2 here, which means you have to say -2 plus 2 over -2 plus 2 over 2. Remember, you add 2 points, which means you have to divide by 2 to find what we call the average. I mean the median point. You have to find the median point, which means -2 plus 2 is 0, divided by 2 is 0, which means the line of symmetry is somewhere here. Which means the line of symmetry, you have to know the line of symmetry. If you join this part and this part, which means this part and this part can fix into this part, which means these two parts are equal. So after getting the line of symmetry, which is 0, which means the equation of line of symmetry, to say y equals to 0. So y is equals to 0 become the equation of line of symmetry, right? Again, the examiners may ask you to find what you call they may ask you to draw the graph of y is equals to x plus 1. Examiners may ask you to draw the graph of y is equals to x plus 1. So if they ask you to draw the graph of y is equals to x plus 1, which means that graph is already there. This graph is already there, which means this graph cuts at point or -1 and 1, -1 and 1, which means that graph cuts at -1 and 1, which means that graph cuts at that point. Alright, so if they ask you to solve that equation, they may ask you to solve the equation like draw the graph of y is equals to x plus 1. Then they may ask you to solve the equation like they can give you an equation like 2x squared plus 3x plus 1 is equals to then x plus 1. As you see, the graph is like y is equals to y. Remember, y is equals to 2x squared plus 3x plus 1, and y is equals to x plus 1, which means y is equals to y. So y is equals to y, which means we have to find the point of intersection of this graph and this graph. We have two graphs, the quadratic graph and the linear graph. So we have to find the point of intersection of those two graphs and take the values of x, which means the point of intersection of those two graphs is already here. This one, the first point of intersection. Then the second point of intersection is here. Then you have to take the value of x here and the value of x here, and say x equals base value and x equals second value. Then you may be also asked to find the gradient. Maybe asked to find the gradient at point. Maybe asked to find the gradient. They may ask you to find the gradient at point x is equals to 1. Maybe ask you to find the gradient at point x is equals to 1. So if they ask you to find the gradient at point x equals to 1, which means x equals to 1 is there. X equals to 1 is there, which means you have to draw a dotted line until you touch the graph, that quadratic graph. Then you have to draw a tangent line using a straight line and ruler. You have to draw a tangent line. Make sure this angle and this angle are approximately equal, which means when they are marking this solution for the gradient, they use estimates. When I say estimates, which means when a student gets plus or minus the exactly solution, which means all answers are correct. So what I'm saying is, if you draw that one, that graph we call it a tangent line. So if you are done with the tangent line, then you have to take some points. The first point let's say point A, then take x and y, then point B, x and y. Right. If you are done with point x and y, if you are done with point x and y, which means you have to take those points, then say gradient is equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This is the formula to find the gradient. Show you all familiar with that one. So after you're done with the gradient, which means you are all done, then they may also ask you to find the area enclosed by the curve. Area enclosed by the curve. Area enclosed by the curve. They may ask like find the area enclosed by the curve. Find the area enclosed by the curve. Let's use this graph. Remember, these graphs are the same. It's just this one is maximum and this one is minimum. Alright, so some of you want to know which determine the graph to be maximum, either maximum or minimum. Remember, if the graph is maximum, which means the coefficient of x squared, like we have x squared plus 2x plus 1 is equals to 0. Right, the coefficient of x squared is this one, this line. The coefficient, which means we have 1 here, which means if we have positive 1, which means when you draw this graph, it becomes the minimum graph. If the coefficient is negative 1, which means if you draw that graph, the shape is like a parabola, which means all these two graphs are parabola graphs. So the shape, if the coefficient of x squared is negative, which means it will be mountain shaped or cup up shaped. Right, let's use this graph to find the area enclosed by the curve. If they ask you to find the area enclosed by the curve at the point x is equals to 1, let's assume x equals to 1, x goes to 1, then x is equals to 2, x goes to 1 and x goes to 2. You know this graph is y-axis, right? This one is y-axis. This graph is y-axis, or x is equals to 0. This one is x-axis or y is equals to 0. So this one is x is equals to 0, x is equals to 1. So x equals to 1 is here, then x equals to 2 is here. Then you want to find the area enclosed by the curve, this area. Want to find this area. I'm sure we are all familiar. Want to find the area, this one. So for us to find this area, graphically, remember this one is not a graph, it's just a sketch. I want to give you some basics on how to work out on graphs, so that if you touch any graph, you score 12 out of 4. 12 out of 4. So for you to find the area, we have to use this formula. For you to find the area, use this formula. Area enclosed by the curve is equals to x-axis scale over 100. Remember, 100 is just the number of boxes in the graph. Remember, 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, a box of in your graph is 100 boxes, 100 small boxes, times y-axis scale over 100, then times number of boxes in the area indicated. Right. So what you all need is you have to count the number of boxes here, the number of small boxes in the indicated area. If we have the small boxes, which means you have to count 2 boxes and say 1, 2 boxes, 2 half boxes and say 1, 2 half boxes and say 1. Then the scale, you already have the scale, the y-axis scale and the x-axis scale. Then simplify, then leave your answer in units. So for any questions, you may contact me on the number I want to give you. So this is how to work out on graphs, the basics on how to work out on graphs and totalize 12 over 12 in your final exam. It's either June or November. So thank you guys for being together in this lesson. So after watching this graph basics on quadratic graphs, linear graph, and also if you are given the cubic graph, which means you may get something like this one. The concepts are the same. The only difference is the cubic graph cuts the x-axis 3 times, as compared to the quadratic graph, which cuts the x-axis 2 times, and the linear graph cuts the x-axis one time. So as I said, after watching this lesson, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, CS Adolescence. Enjoy more episodes on this channel. Thank you so much.